Using his freedom of speech to its fullest extent, it's John James and Freedom's Pep Rally. Now, America's friendliest host, your buddy, John James.
All right, so you want to move your kids into homeschooling, but you don't have any idea how. You know the indoctrination camps are getting worse and worse and worse, and there is no end in sight. How do you change it? Well, homeschooling is a great way to do it. It promotes not only better learning, better ratio, parent-teacher, or rather, parent-teacher, teacher-student ratio, and in addition to all that, more family time. Some parents may not welcome that. I think most would. Here is a trailer from Schoolhouse Rocked, and we're going to have one of the producers of it, Yvette Hampton, coming right up. First of all, if you're watching on video, you'll see the trailer. If you're listening on the radio, you will hear what it's all about. Here we go.
You're not inadequate. You are perfectly capable. I mean, what is it about a parent that when their child turns 5, all of a sudden the parent's no longer a viable option? Like, oh, you're done. Now it's the school's turn.
I think the quality of education has steadily deteriorated in America. There is an agenda to steal our children.
You feel inadequate because you've been taught by our school system that you're inadequate.
We had no frame of reference for homeschooling other than it just seemed like torture. Like, why would a sane woman choose to be locked up with her kids for 18 years in a row when a school bus would come and take them away and give you like a 9-hour break every day?
No one knows your child better than you do, and no one loves your child more than you do.
And homeschooling changes the game on everything. Homeschooling allows us to say to the child, what sort of life do you want? What sort of God-given dreams, talents, and abilities is he speaking into you?
When we think about classroom education and we ask what makes for good education, almost every professional educator will say low student-teacher ratio, teachers who care, good methods, good curriculum. Well, in homeschooling, you get the best of all of those things.
What we discovered is that it's very efficient to homeschool.
You have the person who knows the student the best. You have the ability to customize the curriculum around the student. You have a great student-teacher ratio.
And I realized I am accomplishing with Sierra in 25 minutes to an hour every day what it's taking the school system 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to accomplish with my older daughter. I loved watching the light bulb come on and watching her want to sit down and read with me. And I loved spending time with her.
There are just so many benefits, including being able to have a relationship with your own children.
Continue doing what you're doing. Don't give up, because I do believe that homeschool moms are America's greatest heroes.
November 12th.
It's coming.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that is
thank you.
just awesome.
Thank you.
Now, Schoolhouse Rocked has been a thing for quite a while. I mean, did you and your husband both develop it together?
Well, actually, yes. However, it started with my husband. He worked in the Hollywood film industry for many years, and we were a homeschooling family. And so about 5 years ago, we just decided to make this documentary. And actually, he was the one who came up with the idea of it. The Lord put it on his heart. And really, it was because we said that we would never homeschool because we bought into all of the lies and negative stereotypes and misconceptions about homeschooling. And once our eyes were opened, we really wanted to share that message with the rest of the world.
That's amazing. Now, your husband is Garrett.
Yes.
And wow. So you're on the road now? Are you still on tour doing the promotion for this?
No, we actually have landed in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have a home now, but we were on the road for several years filming this documentary, and it was amazing. We've circled the country twice, and so we wanted to get a really broad view of what homeschooling was like across the nation, not just, we're from California, so we didn't want to just look at homeschooling in California. We wanted to look at it nationwide.
Right. Well, that's amazing because homeschooling your kids gave you the ability to
Yes.
travel the country and see the country and promote this homeschooling agenda that you're working on while teaching the kids, while keeping
Yes.
the kids in school and not displacing them. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
what a great opportunity.
Yeah, it was incredible. We say that our girls have gotten to drive the map instead of just looking at it in a book. And and we have made it to a little, I think 31 states is somewhere around there. I need to count because we just took another road trip and hit a few more states. And so it has been a great privilege for them. They've been to more states than most adults could ever say
Yeah.
that they've been to.
Absolutely. Have you been to Maine or New England?
No, not yet. It's on
Oh.
our list, but
Oh,
we've not made
good.
it that far yet.
Good. Yeah, that's where we are. We're in Maine. New England's a pretty nice place.
Yeah.
We're pretty heavily lefty controlled right now.
Sure.
But it's still a beautiful state, and would love to have you here. And I'm sure parents want to hear your story. I mean, a lot of parents are saying, I can't, and I hear this all the time. No, I can't afford it. I don't have time. My husband and I work. We'd love to, especially with what's going on now. Critical race, we're one of the whitest states in the nation,
Yeah.
and critical race theory has taken a stronghold here. There's nobody, by and large, this is not a racist country.
Right. No, it's really interesting because years ago when my husband and I were kids, we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and the concern when we started homeschooling our daughter, we're in our 11th year of homeschooling. So 11 years ago, our greatest concern was that they would go into public education and be taught evolution. And it never crossed our minds that they would be taught, CRT and comprehensive sex ed and all of the other garbage that's being taught in public institutions
Right.
now. And so it has gotten so much deeper as our girls, so we have two daughters, and as they've grown, we've just witnessed the demolition of this institution. But what's interesting is that it's not by mistake. A lot of people will say, the public schools are failing. Oh, no, they're not. They're actually doing exactly what they set out to do. It's been
Right.
decades and decades, generations upon generation, who have implemented this indoctrination into our kids. And it's why our country is where it is today, is because of the indoctrination that has gone on in the minds of these children, instead of parents taking that responsibility to keep them home and teach them their values and their morals. They've handed them off to the state. And so the state has taken control. The country has taken control, thinking that they are the ones who are responsible to teach kids.
And with what's going on today and the fact that the kids, the morals should come from you.
Right.
The morals come from mom and dad, from the church,
Right.
from, the people that the parents choose to have instill morals in their kids. For us,
Right.
it was us, my wife and me. It was our church. And we kept close tabs on the school when they were growing up. But I've got to tell you, when my kids were growing up, my kids are all, I've got a 33, 34-year-old and a 31-year-old now and some grandkids. But it wasn't anything like this
Right.
back then. And now it's like out of control. How do you think they justify teaching all of this so-called educational stuff, which is actually opinion? How do they justify teaching it as fact-based curriculum when it is all it's called? I mean, the very title is theory.
Right. Well, I don't know that they can justify it truly, and they haven't had to justify it really until COVID hit. That's been one of the most interesting things about COVID, is that parents have just handed their kids off, sent them to school. They haven't asked questions. They've just let the school do what they do. Excuse me. And, parents just have thought, well, they're learning math and science and history and all the things that we learned as kids growing up. But they have parents have been really, for all intents and purposes, kind of stuck their head in the sand and pretended like they didn't know what was going on, or really genuinely didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And then when COVID hit and kids started doing, online school, and parents started to wake up. And that's the amazing thing about the timing of this film, is that we had planned actually to release this film a few years ago, and we had several delays. And we couldn't understand, okay, Lord, why is it taking so long to get it out? And then everything has unfolded over the last year and a half. And now we know why, because this is the perfect time. Parents' eyes and hearts and minds are open more now than ever before to what their kids are really learning. And they're starting to recognize the dangers of that. And so, yeah, I mean, they can't justify it. There's really no way to do that. But, there's a lot of things people can't justify, yet they continue to push their agenda because it's what they believe is the thing to do.
Right. Yeah, they do push their agenda, and a lot of people buy it. And there are a lot of, I mean, face it, there are a lot of hands-off parents who, like it said in the trailer there, get the mom that thought, well, just, get rid of the kids for 8 hours a day
Right.
and 8 or 9 hours a day and, free up some time. And I think to an extent, a lot of parents do like a little bit of free time during the day, but there are other ways to get it. And
Sure.
that's where creativity and homeschooling comes in. Schoolhouse Rocked. We're talking with Yvette Hampton. Now, are you call yourself the producer, the writer, or all things as part of this movie?
I'm the producer and the host. So I'm the
Okay.
one who gets to be somewhat in front of the camera. I did all the interviews. My husband is the behind the scenes guy. He's the director. And he did all the camera work, and he pretty much did everything else. He edited the film. He did almost all of it.
Wow.
So I got the fun part. I got to just talk to people.
Just a beautiful job. It's just a great
thank
job.
you.
Very well done.
Thank you.
So what can people do? I mean, what are they going to learn by watching your movie?
Sure. Well, we talked about the public school system, but this film really is not a film about what's going on in the public schools. We touch on that because, every good story has to have a villain. And
Right.
so in this movie, the villain is the public school indoctrination institutions. But the film really is to give hope and courage to families who are homeschooling, who maybe are thinking about homeschooling, and help them to see really the benefits and the blessings to their families. And again, going back to kind of debunking all of those misconceptions. So we talk about, the mom who feels inadequate, which, by the way, is pretty much every single mom we've ever met, including
Right.
myself. No mom ever feels like she's completely adequate to teach her child, but we are the most adequate because they're our children. We know them better than anyone else. We love our kids more than anyone else loves them. And so as their parent, we are the best teacher for them. So we talk about the all of the benefits of home education. We talked to a single mom, a mom who homeschooled her kids. She had 4 boys and she homeschooled them for 19 years, and how that can happen as a single mom. We address families who have children who maybe have a learning disability and how they can also homeschool. And, the socialization question, of course, that everyone continues to ask. Less and less people, of course, are asking that question than in years past. But people still wonder, how do homeschool kids socialize? And so that question is answered. Pretty much every question that people could ever have about homeschooling is answered in a positive way. And at the same time, we don't paint a perfect picture of homeschooling. We know that
Right.
it's hard, but it's worth doing.
Absolutely. And now you had said that you can do as much teaching in just a few hours as it takes all day at
Oh,
a public
sure.
school. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. As a matter of fact, it is the most efficient way, as one of our guests, Andrew Pudawa, says, because when you think about the traditional schoolroom, you've got a classroom full of, 30 or so kids. Well, most of that day is through, wrangling kids, trying to get kids to cooperate, disciplining and correcting the kids through the day. And there just are so many things. You have to have snack breaks, and you have to have recess, and you have to have lunch breaks, and all of the things that go into dealing with a whole classroom. But when it's just you at home, the actual day of instruction, even in a regular school, is for young kids. If we're talking, early elementary,
Yep.
you're talking maybe an hour or 2 of actual instruction. And when you're looking at middle school or high school, it's really only about 4 hours of actual instruction that's needed, even in a regular school. It's just all that other time is just wasted and taken up. So in homeschooling, you don't need that much time to home educate your kids, and you just incorporate it into the rest of your life, because they're not just learning the academics. That's an important part of it, but they're learning life. They're learning how to
Yeah.
budget, how to grocery shop, how to deal with doctor's appointments, how to deal with homemaking and cooking and cleaning and all of the things that make us up as adults. And so there's so much more to being home. And then, there are so many options pretty much nationwide for homeschoolers to be able to connect with one another. There's co-ops, there are all sorts of groups everywhere. And if there's not one in your area, a lot of people are just starting them up on their own. And so there are tons of options for kids to be involved in their local communities, in their churches, in their homeschool communities. And so, yeah, education doesn't take that long.
I've learned it's so much easier than you would think, especially if you have a support team around you, whether it's a church or other neighborhood members or other family members who have, an interest in what is going on in your family. And when families all have kids around the same age, and do they, in these pods that a lot of neighborhoods and churches are making, putting together, it's not necessary that the kids have to be all exactly the same age or grade level, right?
Right. It's kind of going back to the one room schoolhouse model. And that's what happens in a lot of homeschool families, is that you can bring your kids together. My girls, for instance, they're almost 5 years apart. And so I have an 11-year-old and an almost 16-year-old. Well, there are several subjects that we do and always have done together. When in the early years, of course, while I was teaching my younger daughter how to read, my older daughter already knew how to read, but she would find other things to do during that time. But now we can read history together. We can study science together. We do a lot of read alouds just as a family. And the great thing about that is when you do things together, it really does help build a bond inside of that family, because we're experiencing life together. We're experiencing books together, music together, history and science, all of those things we get to do together as a family. And so my girls really do, they do a lot of school together. They do things separately. Of course, my 5th grader is not doing the same math that my 10th grader is doing. But yeah, there are great ways. And the same with, like you said, with different co-ops and stuff. You could have one mom who is really gifted in teaching history. She's a history buff. And then you've got another mom who's excellent at science. And so they'll, trade kids, and this mom will teach history to all the kids, and this mom will teach science to all of the kids. And it's a beautiful way for the community to work together and for families to just bond with one another.
That's terrific. I love that. That just sounds so good to me. And even if you do have one or two family, cooperative that, there's neither family knows a lot about, say, science, or neither family is really that versed on history. The curriculum that is, I'm sure there's some great curriculum, which you probably recommend, that makes it easy to teach this stuff. And I'm sure as the parents are teaching, they too learn. And which is it's what a cool thing when a student and parent can learn together.
Yeah. Oh, that is one of the greatest parts of homeschooling. Growing up, I went to a private school and I hated school. I hated the academics. I loved the social part of it, but I really struggled academically. And, when you're in a traditional school, your teacher cannot slow down for you when you're struggling in a subject. Math was my really difficult subject. I really struggled with it. And so I just don't have a mathematical mind. Well, my teacher could never slow down the class to help me and keep up with my needs, nor could she speed up for the student who was really advanced, who at this point was now just bored out of their mind because, they're ready to move on. And so with homeschooling, yes, I feel like I'm regaining my education all over again. I just told my husband the other day, I said, I legitimately do not remember ever being taught about the Holocaust. I mean, that's crazy to me. My girls know a whole lot about it because we've studied it together, but as I'm studying it with them, it's almost like my eyes are open for the first time ever. I'm like, wow, I did not know all of this. And so we've been studying it in bits and pieces for a few years, but it's like I'm learning it for the first time ever. And it is so much fun actually to regain my education, because we have this idea that when we're done with school, when we graduate at 12th grade or when we graduate college, we're done learning. We're done with our educational journey. And that's what I thought when I graduated high school was I'm all done. I don't want to do this anymore. And I never have to learn anything ever again. And we actually talk about this in the movie. And, it was years and years later, actually, it was after I started homeschooling my girls that I realized, oh, wow, there's so much to learn. There are so many amazing things about this world, this country, science, God's creation, everything. that we can learn together. And so it really is a privilege and an honor. And there are times where I'm completely intimidated by what I need to teach my girls. And as my husband always says, you just have to stay one day ahead of them. Just read ahead, stay one day ahead, and you're going to be fine. And we do, I mean, there's lots of curriculum that really helps to assist in teaching. So it's not like I have to figure it all out myself.
That's great. Now, are there people you can call to if you have questions about the curriculum? I'm sure, and there must be a lot of companies out there now catering to homeschoolers.
Oh, countless, hundreds and hundreds of them. As a matter of fact, several of them are sponsors on the movie. So when you see the film, you'll see their logos pop up. But there are so many different curriculum options for every subject, for every learning style. You know, that's another thing, is all of our kids learn differently. Some are auditory, some are kinesthetic, some are visual. And so you can find the curriculum that fits best with your child's learning style. And it is such a privilege to be able to be the one, as their parent, to recognize how your child learns best and then how to cater to that learning style. That's terrific. And do you recommend certain ones, or how do you tell what is good? I'm sure there's some bad ones out there too. Some not, I don't know, bad, but just not as helpful as others. You know, they're good and bad with everything. How do you know? Well, you know, it's funny, when we very first started talking about homeschooling, I had a friend who said, you know, you'll probably start out with one curriculum and then you'll kind of branch out and you'll find different, you know, things that you like for math and science and history and language arts and those things. And I remember thinking, well, why would I not just basically buy a canned curriculum and use that? And so, of course, that's what I did the first year. I bought a box set and I said, well, this is what we're going to do, which is what most homeschool moms do. But as you get into the homeschool world, one, there are conventions that you can go to all over the nation that show, I mean, you can basically test out, you know, if you will, I mean, visit every curriculum stand table and get to touch and feel and talk to their representatives and see what their curriculum is. And if that would be one that would work well for you and your family. But I, of course, did exactly what she said. You know, years into it, I found what worked best for language arts, what worked best for history and science and in math. You know, just recently, actually, we changed our math curriculum. My daughter was struggling with the one that she was working with. And so I said, oh, well, you know, let's try a different one and see if this new one is a better fit for you. And so every season is a little bit different, but that's where community comes into, is that, you know, go to your friend's house who homeschools and just say, hey, what are you using for your kids, and take a look at what they're using. And that's real. I mean, the homeschool community really is a community of very like-minded people. And so they're always willing and anxious to help one another out. How do you find them? I know there are a lot of homeschoolers around, and you don't know about them until one day you're talking, oh yeah, well, I homeschool my son. Well, really? And they're all over the place, but is there a resource where you can look people up? There are several, actually. As much as I despise most of social media, that is a great way to find community. A lot of, especially, you know, bigger towns and cities have a local Facebook homeschool page. You know, where we live, we're in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area. We have a local homeschool Facebook page. And so people post on there and ask questions and plan field trips together and you know, park days and things like that. But the other two resources that are fantastic is 46 of the 50 states have a state homeschool organization. So where I am, it's called Homeschool Oklahoma. And they are kind of our state covering. They watch legislation. They really keep an eye on everything that's happening with homeschool laws in our state. But then they also put on a conference every year. They just stay connected with the homeschool world all over the state of Oklahoma. And they have resources as well. So if you go on their website, and most of these homeschool organizations do this, if you go on their website, they will show, you know, here are some local groups that you can connect with in your area, whether you're in Oklahoma City or Tulsa or wherever it is that you are. The other resource, and you can find those at homeschoolfreedom.org, I think. If you go to schoolhouserocked.com, which is our website, there's a drop down that says homeschooling your state. And that will take you to that website. So you can just go to that website, find your state, and that will take you to your organization if you have one, which most do. But the other resource is HSLDA, which is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association.
Okay.
They also are a great resource, and you can go on their website and find local groups in your area as well. You just search by zip code, and they'll tell you what groups are available.
Very cool. Homeschool legal
It-
HSLD.
it's HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association.
Perfect. Tina asks, how difficult do you think it would be to homeschool your child as a senior if you've never done it before? We are preparing for the possibility for next year.
Oh, that's a great question, Tina. I'm not going to say it would be really easy. Part of it depends on your child's willingness to be homeschooled. But in saying that, I do want to say you as the parent know what's best for your child. A lot of parents will ask their children, do you want to be homeschooled? Even though the parent knows in their heart that it's the right thing to do for that child. And foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. Children do not know what's best for them. Even a child of 17 years old or 16 years old, they don't know what's best for them always. And so it's really your job and your responsibility as a parent to do what's best for them. So, but it's helpful, of course, for your child to be engaged in the process, to be excited about the process. And so I would really include them, not necessarily in the decision making of it, because if you decide that homeschooling is what's best for your child, do that, but then include them in the planning of homeschooling, and definitely take time. Now, if you're looking at next year, you'll have the whole summer to kind of unschool them and move them into a smoother transition. If you pull them in the middle of the school year, I always recommend doing a couple of months even of unschooling or deschooling, and kind of undo that idea of doing what the traditional school looks like, because as pretty much every homeschool parent does, whether you start in kindergarten or 12th grade, we all go into it thinking that it needs to look like the traditional school. You have to sit down at your desk at 7 a.m. and you're going to do school until 3 p.m. and you're going to make it look exactly like it looks in school. And you're going to have all the worksheets in front of them, and you might have a couple breaks mixed in there. But that is really not what homeschooling is. Really focus on the relationship with your child. That is the most important thing, is develop and build up that relationship and make it fun. Make it as fun as possible. And if there's a part where they're just really frustrated with something, take a step back, figure out where the frustration is and how you can help get them through that, and just work through the issues with them, but really work on developing the relationship between you and your child, not just pushing them into this world of homeschooling. So, but yes, absolutely. It can be done at any point. We of course always recommend starting as early as possible, but it's better to start now than never.
Absolutely, especially if the kid is being, maybe there's a bully situation that is getting out of control, and we see, while people will say, well, homeschooled kids, they don't have the social life, as you say, they certainly can. A lot of that, I'm sure, is up to the parents to make sure they have some. And a lot of public schools will actually allow, or maybe it's a law in some places, that kids within a school district, if they're homeschooled, they are still allowed to take part in extracurricular activities like, baseball, softball, soccer, theater, maybe, things like that. I'm not sure how that works. But there could be any number of reasons why a parent would want to take a kid out of school, not the least of which could be critical race theory and gender theory being taught as fact, and dividing people as we see it doing across the nation. This is the best way to stop the divisiveness and make the government wake up and either change things or just get out of the business of teaching kids. And give it to private, the private people. Put it in the care of individuals.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what America was built off. Everything the government gets involved in, you know how that goes. Everything.
Not well.
Right. So when it comes to choosing a curriculum, back to this again, just for a quick minute, I wonder, can you mix and match if, the math program seems good with this one, but you don't want their English or
yes.
history, and so you go over, you can do that. And is it cost prohibitive in any way?
Oh, well, it depends on what you're using. Some are more expensive than others, but yes, right now, I say between both my girls, we're probably using 6 or 7 different publishers and curriculum for them because that's just what best meets their needs. And and let me just say on that note too, there are several options for homeschooling, even online resources that are completely free. And so people tend to think sometimes that homeschooling has to be very expensive. It can be expensive if you make it expensive, but it doesn't have to be. And there are plenty of online resources that people can use to homeschool their kids. And it doesn't have, you don't have to buy the most expensive, newest, shiniest books in order to teach your kids effectively.
It does. History doesn't change, for one thing. I mean, history is history, right?
Unless you're the government who's trying to change history
exactly.
and remove history.
It's terrible, and they again, it's very frustrating, and it's hard to talk with them about it. Yeah. And as we've seen, our own Department of Justice is trying to silence parents from speaking out at public school board meetings.
Oh, yeah.
The school boards they elect, the schools they pay for. Terry McAuliffe in Virginia, I'm sure you know, he is pushing hard against allowing parents to be involved in telling teachers what to teach. This is a way to take care of that. Cameron says, remember how the gas can turned out when the government got involved. Yeah. I do remember.
Yeah.
You're talking about the safety piece, Cameron, I assume. Another question for you. My parents were always, I went to public schools. I never had any problems. I have some great memories of great teachers. This was a while ago, and things were a lot different back then. And I was the class clown, I'll be honest with you. So I sort of enjoyed the entertainment aspect of it. Didn't learn much, but I enjoyed that aspect. My mother would always say, I'd pretend to be sick. What kid doesn't?
Right.
You have that problem in homeschooling?
Well, no, because I'm with my girls so much that I know them better than anyone else knows them. And so I know when they're genuinely sick, but there's no reason for them to pretend to be sick. They're going to be home either way. So it's not like I'm going to
That's true. Yeah.
send them off somewhere else if they're sick.
Yeah. Send them to their room, maybe.
Right. But, we have days where, maybe we're not feeling well. Actually, our family just got over COVID. We got it about a month and a half ago. And so we were down for about 2.5 or 3 weeks where literally no school got done. No academics got done because I say my girls had a very mild case, but my husband and I were pretty sick. Yeah. And so my girls just did, they read, they did some of their math. They did the things that they could do on their own after they were feeling well.
Sure.
But it's okay because I'm not bound to anyone else's scope and sequence and schedule for the year. We can just continue on where we left off. And that's exactly, what we do. Right now, we're getting ready to launch this movie next week. And so there's a lot going on right now. Typically right now I would be doing school with my girls, but I'm sitting here talking to you, which is a great privilege. And my girls are fully capable of doing what they need to be doing without my assistance. And so it's a beautiful way for a family to work together, and you teach your kids how to learn. And the thing is, it's not just checking a box. I really don't care about checking the box of having all the things done. I care about my children actually learning the material. Some might find this surprising. Unless the curriculum requires it, which very few of what we use does that, I don't test my girls. It's not required in the state that I live in. And I don't need to test them because I know what they know and I know what they don't know. And if they're struggling, I don't need to give them a math test, because if they're struggling with a math concept, I know that they're struggling with it because I look at their math work and see where they're struggling, and we slow down and we figure out where the missing link is, and then we continue on with the math lesson. And so I don't need to test them because I'm with them and I know exactly what they're struggling with and what they're exceeding at. So Yeah, it's
Yeah, that's great. We're talking, by the way, with Yvette Hampton, Schoolhouse Rocked, talking about homeschooling. Schoolhouse Rocked, the movie, comes out next week, and we'll get to how you can see that coming up. I don't want to miss any questions, though. If anybody has a question, go ahead and post them on. I think most of the social media platforms I get here. I'm not sure about Rumble at this point because that's kind of new for us. But Sarah says, what do you recommend for students with dyslexia? And that can be a very, inhibiting problem for some kids.
Sure. Well, the first thing I will say is that God gave you your child. And again, you are the best teacher for your child. Do not buy into people telling you that you need to send your child off to have someone else teach them all day, every day of the school year. But there are programs, there are oftentimes in your local area, you can find help for students with dyslexia. And it's okay to get help in certain areas. We have had times with our kids where they've struggled with, I have one daughter who struggles with math. I think I may have said that. So we got her a math tutor, and it was not a big deal. It was something that I was struggling with, trying to explain to her. And so I found a local math tutor and I said, here, can you please help her? And it's been the most amazing thing. Well, it's the same when it comes to issues like dyslexia, is that you find someone who you trust who can help your child work through that. But there are resources as well. There's a great homeschool organization called SPED Homeschool. It's SPED Homeschool, and it's for special ed homeschool. And they deal with all of those things. We actually address this in the movie as well. But SPED Homeschool helps, they come alongside parents who are dealing with any kind of disability, whether it's, ADD or dyslexia, or maybe, even teaching children who have Down syndrome. And there are a variety of struggles that our kids deal with, but no one's going to take the time and put in the effort to help them like you as their parent will. In the movie, we interview a family whose son he was born deaf. Well, they were hearing parents, of course, and the rest of their children had perfect hearing. And so they had never experienced anything like this before. And as he was growing into his toddler years and reaching the age of school, they said, well, you need to get him into this special deaf school. They lived in Washington State.
Yep.
And so the doctors recommended going to this one particular school. And so they just thought, well, I guess that's what we're going to do because we don't know how to teach a deaf child. And so they put him in this school, and they soon realized that he was not thriving. And, this mom at one point just had this realization that, wait a minute, I've taught all of my other children. I can teach him too. And here's the thing, we are a Christian family. And I truly believe that if God's called you to do this, which he has, he is going to give you everything you need in order to do what he's called you to do. He's not going to leave you hanging. And that doesn't mean it's not going to be hard sometimes. Absolutely, it's going to be hard, but anything worth doing is hard. Marriage is hard. Parenting is hard. Teaching our kids is hard. Living life on this earth right now is really hard, but it doesn't mean we just sit back and don't do anything about it. And so you have his best interest in mind, or her best interest in mind. And so there are resources to help you, like SPED Homeschool. And you're learning how to deal with them anyway when they're not in school, and how to help them. And so you just bring that into your homeschool. Like we talked about earlier, you learn alongside of your child, and you figure out what's best for them, and you be patient with them. Don't expect them to do school like other children will do. Don't expect them to read and write like another child might do that, especially if you have other children in the home, and help them to realize that somehow this is a gift that can be used for good things. And, no one's going to encourage them like you will as a parent as well. So I think having the patience and finding the resources to help.
Well, we've seen Yvette, a lot of, I want to say younger teachers, because I loved most all my public school teachers. I really did. In fact, I called my fourth grade teacher, and I'm no spring chicken. So I called my fourth grade teacher on a whim last week. She's still alive.
Wow.
She's and she's in her 80s, and she remembered me, and we just had such a great, fellowship on the telephone. But a lot of the younger maybe it's they're a product of today's universities. They're condescending, they're mouthy to their students, they're judgmental, they're almost like judgmental peers, scolding the students, calling them racist, scolding them if, oh, you're a Donald Trump supporter. My head's going to explode. I see, what are they doing? What are these? They are supposed to be non-judgmental and mentors, if nothing else, and teachers.
Yeah.
And they are humiliating the kids. It's no wonder kids are damaged goods when they come out of the public schools sometimes.
Yeah. And, I will say that's probably not the norm, but that certainly is happening. And one of the things that people always think is, well, it's not happening in my school. My school has good teachers and my teachers care about my kids. And, maybe we live in a Christian community, and so our public schools are really good. Well, even if it's not the teacher themselves, it's the system that is so unbelievably broken that those good teachers can't get out of it. And then you wrap that up with some of the really bad teachers. And you're absolutely right. A lot of these young teachers, this is what they've been taught. I don't know if you ever listen to Charlie Kirk, but he goes on to the college campuses and he challenges these college students, and they're always so dumbfounded. They're like, oh, well, that can't be true because this is what I was taught in the classroom.
Yep.
And Luke 6:40 says a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. And what we have to realize is that whoever is teaching our kids, our children are going to become like them. They're basically an apprentice for the first 18 years of their life with whoever is holding that crown of teacher. And so you might have a great teacher, but you might have a really, really bad teacher. And sometimes that really bad teacher is going to be really nice to mom and dad face to face, but then you get them in a classroom and it all falls apart as soon as that door is closed.
Absolutely. And more teachers are teaching their values.
Yes. Oh,
to
yes.
The kids. And we see that. I thank God for the age of videos on demand, because we see it. We see, kids using their phones in classrooms where a teacher said, they took her American flag out and said, pledge allegiance to this flag, and had the rainbow flag hanging up. I mean, who would ever imagine we would get to this place? We've got another question here. I think it's a question. Derica, I loved my 6-year-old teachers and staff. It was the superintendent that finalized my decision to homeschool this year. Oftentimes it is. The administration can be just as troublesome as the teachers. They lay down the law, and the teachers have to follow the law, or they risk losing their jobs. So I'm watching the clock now. We're getting close. I love this chat, and you are so full of wisdom and some great ideas. And there's so many different directions I could go in, so many different questions I could ask, but we're running out of time. But I want people to know there is help out there. Schoolhouse Rocked is the name of the movie now. It comes out on the 12th, correct?
Yes, it comes out on Friday, November 12th. People can actually pre-purchase their tickets now. It just opened up yesterday, and so people can go on to Schoolhouse Rocked. It's ROCKED, schoolhouserocked.com. They can purchase tickets there. And then we also have a weekly podcast, and that's been a huge blessing because we get to basically take homeschool leaders and influencers in the homeschool world. And every week we have a new guest on the podcast. It airs Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with the same guest. So it's basically a 1-hour interview divided into 3 20-minute episodes. Nice. And we talk about all things homeschool. And when I say all things, we talk about curriculum. We talk about, just the day-to-day workings of a homeschool, but we also talk about marriage, and we talk about parenting, and we talk about homemaking and organization, and again, all the things that are incorporated into the world of a homeschool family, because we sometimes call it life schooling, because it really is part of your life. It's not just something that you separate and you do school separately and then you do life separately. It's all intertwined together. And so we talk about all those things on the podcast as well. But yes, the movie comes out Friday, November 12th. We are super excited about it. And we really encourage people to invite their friends, invite their families and neighbors and anyone they can, pay the one-time download fee to stream it to your home, and then have a party and have some chocolate cake. And
that's great. Is it going to be available on like Amazon or any of the other services?
Eventually it will. Right now, it's only going to be available through the virtual cinema platform. And people, the other option is people could do group showing. So if they want to show it at their church or, some sort of local event, we're actually doing it at a local theater here for the big premiere next week, which we're very excited about. So if you have a local theater who will allow you to rent out a theater, you could show it there. But there are different, those are the two options right now, is to do a group showing or to stream it to your home. And then it will come out on DVD after the new year. And then, sometime after that, it will come out on streaming with, Amazon and Netflix, things like that.
Yeah. What a great idea. We've got a church that actually a church, Central Church, it's called, has 3 locations. It's a Christian-based church.
Yeah.
And they're very, very good. Very, your typical 21st century worship house with, the screens and the cameras and it would be, in fact, the pastor, who's a great pastor, his name is Dan Coleman. You can look up centralchurch.me and you'll learn all about the church. His name is Dan Coleman. He's from Massachusetts. He's settled in Maine, and he is the lead preacher, and he does his thing live in Augusta and is simulcast or tape delayed, I should say, and playback on the big screen in 2 other locations. And it still draws great crowds. He is so good that people still come to see him on the big screen, and he's very personable and very good. And they did the Great Pumpkin on the big screen the other night for the kids' Halloween party we went to. So that's a great idea. That's a great idea, because churches do need to get involved in raising the kids, and this would certainly be a good way to do it. I had another question. I don't know as we've got time. I did have a question. You might have thought of this one already, but if you ever get caught talking with yourself, would you say I'm having a parent-teacher conference? I'm just wondering.
I don't think I've ever had that thought before.
Okay, well, I there you go. So you can use that. That's from me to you, and no charge for that.
Thank you.
And the other question I've got is, well, it's not a question, as a suggestion, I guess, because I'm sure your daughters are very intelligent, and I'm sure they love to write. Do they love to write?
I have one that does and one that doesn't.
Okay, well, the one that does, I'm only gonna give her the title. Okay. But she can make a masterpiece around this and write your retirement with my teacher's name is Mom.
Oh, that's a great title.
It is. That's it.
Love it.
Hey,
I'm writing it down.
My teacher's name is Mom. And I mean, that gives me a tear to think somebody could write a story and write, because you are just so inspirational. I mean, this whole thing has been great. And I think we might want to have you back on again sometime.
Wow, I would love that. I would love it.
Yvette Hampton, I appreciate your time. And give your very best to Garrett for us, too.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you for all you're doing. And hopefully we'll get you here in Maine sometime. Maybe we can get you to a speaking engagement.
Yeah, we would love that. Both my husband and I enjoy speaking. I love speaking to homeschool moms and moms and women in general. So before I started on this homeschool speaking journey, I used to help lead moms groups at our church. And I love it. I love encouraging moms and helping them to realize that they are enough. They are everything that their kids need. And, no one else is going to raise them up better than mom can and better than dad can.
Getting a lot of comments saying thank you. Thank you, Yvette. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
You have a great day, and we'll talk with you again.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks so much.
Bye now.
Bye.